I'm Brian Van, SportbikeTrackHere.com, and today I'm going to break down the DRIVEN TT Rearset install on our 2018 STG Kawasaki Ninja 400 project bike. Okay, if you want to see the full install, just stay tuned. When I'm done introducing the product and breaking it down for you, I'm going to show you step by step what it took to get the TT Rearsets installed on our Ninja 400. The kit offers adjustable foot peg positions, 4 to choose from. They have alignment marks that show in millimeters how far up and how far back these foot pegs will be positioned from stock in each hole. They include heel guards, folding toe pegs, which is pretty dang cool. You're also able to adjust these. If you need to shorten the pedal, you just go ahead and move them back in some of the rearward most positions. Lengthen the pedal, you'll keep it out where it's at. This kit retains the use of the OE brake light switch. A lot of the kits we're seeing now for the sport bikes are doing that. That's awesome because that keeps your rear brake light fully functional without having to install any additional parts. What you need to mount this up and do this was included in the kit, and I break down what it takes to do that during the install. On the shift side, the kit, once again, folding toe pieces, 3 positions of adjustment, same foot peg movement is available. GP or standard shift. If you leave the shift knuckle in the same position as it was from the factory and install these rear sets, you're going to have reverse shift, okay? So up shifts, you'll be pushing down, down shifts, up, of course that excludes first gear. Now, if you want standard, you would flip the knuckle so the heim joint is at the bottom, not the top. That's gonna get you standard shift pattern if you prefer that. Tips here. One of the most important things when installing a set of rear sets is gonna be the relationship between the shift rod and the shift knuckle, also the leg or the arm that comes off of the shift pedal. You want that to be as close to or right on 90 degrees to maintain the best possible mechanical advantage for smooth shifting. Something else that's really important is the plane that the heim joints are on needs to be very similar. When you're done, you have everything tightened up and adjusted. You need to be able to wiggle it back and forth like that without any resistance. If you have one twisted one way and one the other, they're going to jam up, it's going to create resistance, and it's going to make the bike harder to shift. This tip is one of the most important that I can give you when installing a set of rear sets. Any mistakes that you make here with either the plane the heim joints are on or the angle as relative to the shift rod and the knuckle or the arm coming off the shift pedal, you're going to lose performance, you're going to lose smooth shifting. You do not want that, so really focus on that during the install. If you like what you see so far and you want to go a little further or you need help installing them on your 400, just watch because we're going to show you every step of the way what it takes to get this done and get the right result. Okay, now let's go ahead and jump into the install of the DRIVEN TT Rearsets on our Ninja. Pretty basic stuff here. You know, I've got 6mm, 5mm, 4mm T-handle over here. Flat blade screwdriver, small one. I've got some side cutters to kind of deal with the cotter pin there and the brake clevis. Some Loctite. We may need some other stuff as we go through the process, but this is a pretty easy, basic install. I always like to begin on the brake side. First thing I'll do is break the master cylinder. Bolts loose. You want to do that before you actually take the rear set body off the frame because those typically have a reasonable amount of torque to them. So start there. Save all your OE hardware. Save your OE rear sets too, especially if you're going to do some track days and such. If you happen to have a tip over at the track and you damage the replacement rear sets, you have the OEs in your spare kit. Get yourself back on track real quick and you don't miss any riding time. Start with that. From here, we can go ahead and take the actual footrest itself now off the bike, and then we'll have to undo the brake pedal pivot The Driven TT Rearsets we're going to install on this bike offer 4 foot peg positions. We're going to show you that. There's adjustability of the toe pieces, folding toe pieces. Pretty cool part. Definitely did a good job on those. I've ridden on them quite a bit. The R1 that we did, I had those on there for quite a while at the beginning, and definitely enjoyed riding on them. Nice solid feel, a lot of grip from the foot pegs. This cotter pin can typically be reused multiple times. So you want to spread it apart. If you happen to damage it, don't worry, these are readily accessible. You can go to Home Depot, a hardware store, all the above, and find what you're looking for in a pinch. You can also jump in here with a piece of safety wire if you had to. Okay, slide that out. We're going to go ahead and keep that. You can push that pin out, like so. Now the brake master will hang freely. All that's holding it to the motorcycle now is the actual brake light switch itself. Slide that spring off. This is what actuates the brake light. When you step on the brake pedal, pull down. When you pull down, it closes the connection, turns the brake light on. So go ahead and disconnect that. And now, to remove it from the footrest, all you have to do is push these little release tabs in. They're all the way around that brake light switch, and that'll allow you to slide it right through like so. Okay, so the Driven TT Rearsets offer the ability to retain the function of your rear brake light switch, your OE brake light switch, and we love that. We're seeing that on a lot of the new rear sets now for the current bikes. It just makes it so much easier because a lot of people do street, maybe track, a little bit of both, right? If you're doing just race, you can take this piece off and this piece off. You won't need them if you've eliminated that. But for street guys, you can leave those right here. Now, in order to get that lined up and functioning perfectly, okay, I've already taken a quick look at it. You need to rotate the bracket so that you have an angle about like this. If you're looking at these straight up and down, you want this through hole through the top of the bracket that's going to accept this to be, you know, sort of parallel with those two. Then come down here. I want you to unbolt this piece. This has a internal 4mm head. I want you to take the rear set itself. Let's go ahead and thread that spring through there. Slide the switch into the mounting bracket. That's going to allow the rear set to hang now. Make sure you leave your fastener in there. And what I want to do is I want to try and have as straight of a line for the spring as I can. I'm going to turn this like so and feed the spring through it, like you see there. Okay. Thread locker here wouldn't be a horrible idea. I've got some blue. Put just a little bit of that on right now. Don't need a ton. With the brake pedal, you're going to need your T-handle now to get this started. That's a 4. Okay. Now before you tighten it up, what I want you to do is rotate this. Put the pedal all the way up right until you just feel like, you know what, it's just starting to kind of pull on the spring. I'll leave it right there. We'll go ahead and snug this up now. If you prefer to use a torque wrench, torque specs are included with the instructions. At this point, it's also important to note you need to have selected a foot peg position. The TT Rearsets include 4 different positions. The markings you see on here indicate how much farther up from stock in millimeters and how farther back from stock the TT Rearsets are. 53 millimeters is quite a ways. I don't need that much additional height, okay? So what I'm gonna do, I've already played around with this just a little bit. I'm gonna begin right down here, okay? And it's because of my height and the seat height on this bike. I don't want to go up too high. I'm going to be really scrunched up here. So I'm going to start in this position down here. These need to be installed before you mount the footrest to the bike. We'll go ahead and thread that on. I'm not going to put Loctite on these. We're going to head to the racetrack this weekend, and this is the bike that I'm going to be riding. My expectations are that I may take this apart and play with it a little bit. Once you've found the right position, take it back apart and put Loctite on that bolt. Okay, before we tighten the foot peg up, what I want to do is I want to get an idea of how this is going to sit, because as you can see, you're able to spin this, okay? So in order to get this thing to sit flat, how should I install it? And it looks to me like on this bike, those indicator lines are relatively flat when it's mounted up. So I'm going to try and keep the foot peg running parallel with these cross marks here. Let's go ahead and turn it. 6mm T-handle and a 23mm wrench is what I'm going to use to do this. You won't turn the foot peg, you're actually going to turn the fastener here in the back. So let's start by getting it close. Now we'll get the wrench on it. Kind of rotate it around until it looks pretty good. You may need to do this more than once. It's going to depend on how picky you are too. Some folks, it's going to mean less to if it's perfect. Other folks are super picky. So just hold the wrench and turn the fastener. Hold it up to the bike, see where we landed. I can live with that, that works for me. Okay, now we can go ahead and get the brake connected to the brake pedal. So that's the master cylinder push rod, that's the pivot right there. What I like to do here is get a little bit of multi-purpose grease. There is some friction in there, it's not a ton. And we're going to lubricate the inside of the rear set. Just a thin film. I'm also going to put a thin film of grease on the actual pin itself. I like to install this before I bolt the footrest up. This way you have more room to work with when trying to get that cotter pin installed in there. Okay, remember we're reusing that stock pin. Okay, before I put this back in, I'm going to actually straighten it out just a wee little bit. A pair of pliers. It's going to make life a little bit easier. Okay, spin that around and let's find the hole. Able to rotate that. From here, you just spread the legs of the cotter pin back apart and wrap them around that pin. Like so. Once we get the master all bolted up, if you need to adjust the brake pedal height itself, that's all done right here. You've got a jam nut, and then here's the actual push rod that you would rotate. We'll cover that if we need to actually adjust the pedal itself. Okay, now we're going to bolt up the rear master. Just bolt it right to the rear set itself. Let's get these bolts started. You would also typically use thread locker here. Okay, once again, it's just because this is a project bike. That's the only reason I'm not doing it. Let's go ahead and get these run down, and then we will apply torque to the bolts that mount the footrest to the frame, as well as those that bolt the master to the rear set itself. If you're using the brake light, now's a good time to see if the initial adjustment that I've got in there is going to work. I like that with just a light application of the brake pedal. That turns the brake light on. That angle looks pretty good to begin with, okay? Until I get my riding boots on and actually sit on the motorcycle, I won't know if that's where I'm going to want it permanently or not. I really encourage, once you get the whole install done, you put the riding boots or shoes on that you most often would wear and dial in the foot controls from there. Now we're ready to jump on the other side and do the shifter. Okay, now we're going to begin on the shift side. This, in my opinion, is always the easier of the two sides. On the brake side, you're dealing with the brake master, you're dealing with that brake pedal pivot, and you're dealing with, on this particular install, the brake switch itself. A lot more to fiddle around with over here. We've just got the footrest and the shifter. This is typically pretty basic stuff. There are some really important things that we are going to show you along the way. I'm going to start by loosening up the shift rod right here. Okay, we're going to reuse this part of the stock shift rod because it is actually fixed right to that shift knuckle. You see that is permanent right there, and it connects down here. With this kit, you're able to do both standard or GP shift. For this install, because I'm going to be riding this motorcycle at the track now this upcoming weekend, I'm going to go GP shift. That's my pattern of preference. So that's what we're going to do. Loosen up the two bolts here at the footrest. Like so. See if we're able to just kind of rotate this off. Sometimes you can, other times you can't. Depends on clearance, but it looks like we'll be able to do that. Let's begin with the foot peg. I already know where I want to put it. So now we'll get this thing lined up, get it torqued down. You're not going to see me use Loctite here, but remember, you need to. You should, especially once you've located its final adjustment point, okay? I really have a feeling I'm going to be tweaking these at the track, so I'm not going to use Loctite on this install. Same position we used on the brake side. As we did over there, I'm going to get the footrest loosely mounted to the bike. I just want to get an idea of where we'll be straight. A little different than the other side. I have to run just back a little bit of that horizon there. So we'll do that right now. Get the 23 wrench and the 6 internal hex. Like right about there is going to be good. Let's get it up on the bike and see how we did. Actually want to rotate that back just a little bit more. Don't love that. So you want to do this until you have it exactly where you want it. Okay, I think I got the foot peg where I want it. And now we're going to go ahead and bolt the footrest to the motorcycle. Once again, it's really important. Do not put one fastener in, then just run it all the way down and then go for the other one. Anytime you have something that installs with multiple fasteners like this, just get them all started, finger tight, like so. And then run it down till it seats. Once again, just finger tight. And once both of them or all of them have been seated, you can then apply final and even torque. Okay, now we're ready to hook up the shift rod to the shift knuckle. You can see I've got it removed from the bike. You're going to want to take the left-hand threaded stud and thread that into your OE shift knuckle. The heim joint is fixed to that. You cannot take that off. Now let's come over here. The heim joint that is on the driven rear set, I want to try and get a reasonably equal amount of threads. So let's kind of line these up. It's be a little difficult to achieve that due to the nut, but we'll get it as close as we can here. So I'm going to get that started. Run that down. Let's thread it out and see how many we have in there. You want to make sure that you have enough threads inside that OE heim joint that you don't have to worry about them being fatigued and pulling out long term. I feel like that's good enough. I'm going to go ahead and just snug the jam nut. Now you can clearly see we've got a little discrepancy here in available threads. And I want to allot for that when I assemble the shift rod. So we're going to begin by threading this on the heim joint that's part of the shift pedal, mounted to the shift pedal. Let's go ahead and that's pretty darn close there now. Like so. Rotate it over. The most important thing now is that 90-degree relationship between the shift rod, the shift knuckle, and the arm coming off the shift pedal. Okay, that looks pretty good right there. I like that. So we're going to get your best mechanical advantage from. Smooth shifting is what we're shooting for. We'll run with this for an initial adjustment, like right about there should be a pretty good starting point, okay? Double check our angles, look good, that's really close to 90. Put the fastener back in. That OE shift knuckle. If you leave that shift knuckle in the same position it was from the factory and install the rear sets, you're going to have reverse shift, GP shift, and that's what I want, so I left it that way on purpose. If you want standard shift, you'll just need to rotate that so that the heim joint is at the bottom of the shift knuckle. Get the fastener in there. I'm also going to pull out on this just a little bit when I torque it down. I'll explain why here in just a second. I'm trying to make sure I've got a good gap between the shift rod and the body of the rear set so that we don't have any dragging there. Pulling this out a little bit, and there's a channel that's cut in the shift rod itself that holds it on there even if the bolt comes a little bit loose. So all you're doing is pulling it to the end, the outer edge of that channel before you snug it up. Okay, now let's go ahead and tighten up the jam nuts. We're going to adjust this. We're going to put on the boots that we normally wear when we ride the bike. Get back on it. We'll adjust the brake pedal. We'll adjust the shifter. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and snug up the jam nuts and the shift rod. What I like to do is turn the heim joint in the direction that I'm going to be tightening the shift rod. I'm going to get a backup wrench to hold the shift rod itself. Okay, we've got the jam nut tight over here at the heim joint that's attached to the shift pedal. Okay, we're going to still support the shift rod with the backup wrench. I'm going to come here and I'm going to snug up the jam nut that actually touches the shift rod. Lastly, remember this one over here, we didn't tighten that all the way, so we're going to need to address that now. Rotate the heim joint to match the torque that we're going to have over here, the same direction, because the goal is once again to have them, on that same plane for smooth shifting. And you can see right here, I did not get the end result that I wanted. One is over rotated. I'm going to show you that. This would be a good way to illustrate that. You can see that this one here, hold the protective boot back. See that angle? You don't want that, okay? You want it to be flat. So what I'm going to do now, and it's just a little difficult having the two jam nuts over here on this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and we're going to loosen this side up and we're going to finish this off by loosening the one on the shift pedal, rotating both of them in the same direction. And then we'll snug this one up again. You might have to do this a couple times to get it just right, but trust me when I tell you, it is worth the effort. Okay. And see that free play like that? That is what you're looking for. What you don't want to have it where they're opposing each other and this thing is all bound up, because then it creates drag and you're going to lose that mechanical advantage and that smooth shifting that you really want, because that is where the great performance comes from. Remember, none of this is adjusted completely. You need to get your riding boots on or your riding shoes, get on the bike in position and move around a little bit. See how it feels, see how it shifts, adjust accordingly. Before you do a lot of riding on the bike, I want you to double check all the torque, all the fasteners. It's really important this stuff doesn't fall off where you're out on the road, okay? After the first 500 miles, also a great idea to just get the Allens back out and just double check everything to make sure it did not come loose. That is really important. Rear sets, clip-ons, things like that, those are safety items. So there you have it. This is the Driven TT Rearset install on the 2018 STG Ninja 400 project bike.